I'm Rebecca, 35, and a single mom to my amazing 10-year-old son Max. I never thought my own family could hurt us so deeply until they completely ignored Max's birthday party last month. Then, as if that wasn't painful enough, my mother had the audacity to text me demanding $2,200 for my brother Jake's graduation celebration. The golden child strikes again. 20 years of being second best to Jake came to a head that day, and something inside me finally snapped. Before I get into how everything went down, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your own family, because trust me, this story will sound all too familiar. Growing up in the Henderson household meant learning early on that there was a hierarchy, and somehow, I was always at the bottom. From the moment my brother Jake was born when I was 2, our family dynamic shifted in ways that would shape my entire life. My parents, Susan and Richard, never tried to hide their favoritism. Jake was their miracle child, born after my mother had been told she might not be able to have more children. Perhaps that's why they treasured him so much. Whatever the reason, the pattern was established early and only grew more pronounced as we got older. When I brought home straight A's in middle school, my mother would glance at my report card and say, "That's nice, Rebecca," before returning to whatever she was doing. But when Jake brought home B's and C's, there would be celebrations, ice cream outings, and proud phone calls to relatives. "He's just not being challenged enough," my father would explain to anyone who would listen. My achievements in track and field were treated as inconvenient obligations. My parents attended maybe 1 in every 5 meets, always sitting stoically and leaving immediately after my events. For Jake's football games, they never missed a single one. They bought custom jerseys with his number, organized tailgate parties, and my father even became the team's unofficial photographer. Christmas mornings told the same story. Jake would unwrap the latest gaming console, expensive sneakers, or whatever trendy item he had mentioned wanting. I would receive practical gifts, usually clothes, school supplies, or books that were on sale. Once, when I was 12, I unwrapped a desk lamp while Jake got a mountain bike. When college applications came around, my parents hired a private tutor to help Jake with his SATs and essays. I was told to use school resources. Jake got to go on campus tours across the country. I was limited to state schools within driving distance to save money. Despite the inequality, I worked hard. I got a partial scholarship to State University and worked 2 part-time jobs to cover the rest. I graduated with honors in business management. Though my parents left my graduation ceremony early because Jake, then a sophomore, had a fraternity event they didn't want him to miss. At 25, I found myself pregnant after a year-long relationship with Mark, who I thought was the one. When I told him about the baby, he disappeared within a week. 7 months pregnant and heartbroken, I moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment and prepared to face parenthood alone. Max was born on a rainy April morning. The moment I held him, I promised him something I had never experienced myself: unconditional love and support. My parents visited briefly at the hospital, brought a small blue teddy bear, and then didn't visit again for 3 months. When they did, it was clear they were uncomfortable with the crying, the mess, and the reality of a baby born out of wedlock. Meanwhile, Jake was finishing his undergraduate degree in business, fully funded by my parents. They threw him a lavish graduation party, flew in relatives from across the country, and gifted him a new car. When I mentioned struggling to afford daycare while working full-time, my mother suggested I should have thought of that before getting pregnant. As Max grew, the pattern extended to him. My parents forgot his birthday twice. When they did remember, the gifts were afterthoughts, usually something generic and often not age-appropriate. One year, my father gave 6-year-old Max a book about golf clearly meant for adult readers. Jake continued as the golden child. After working at our father's friend's company for 2 years, he decided to pursue an MBA at Wharton. Once again, my parents covered his tuition, rent, and living expenses. "It's an investment in his future," my father explained when I expressed surprise at their generosity, despite their frequent complaints about retirement concerns. Over the years, I built a stable life for Max and me. After working my way up at a marketing firm, I now held a solid mid-level management position. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable as long as I budgeted carefully. Our apartment was small but in a good school district, and I managed to put a little away each month for Max's college fund, something my parents had never done for me. Last January, I started planning Max's 10th birthday party. Double digits felt significant, and I wanted to make it special. For the first time, I decided to invite my extended family and make it a proper celebration. Maybe, just maybe, they would finally show up for Max in a way they never had for me. I sent digital invitations 3 months in advance to make sure everyone could plan accordingly. I even called my mother to confirm she had received it. "Yes, Rebecca, I got it," she said, sounding distracted. "We'll check our calendar and let you know." I should have known better than to hope. Max's 10th birthday felt monumental to me. A decade of being his mom. A decade of watching him grow from a helpless newborn into a kind, curious little boy with a passion for space and dinosaurs. I wanted his birthday to reflect how special he was, not just to me, but hopefully to our family as well. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will really come this time?" Max asked as we hung space-themed decorations the night before his party. The caution in his voice broke my heart. Even at 10, he had learned to protect himself from disappointment when it came to my family. "They said they would try their best, sweetie," I answered, hating the uncertainty in my voice. "And Uncle Jake said he might bring Alicia too." Max's face brightened at that. Despite the infrequent visits, he idolized his Uncle Jake. Whenever Jake did show up, he would ruffle Max's hair, give him a $20 bill, and tell him wild stories about college life or his business travels. Brief moments that Max treasured far more than Jake probably realized. I had spent weeks planning the perfect party. The theme was space explorers, aligning with Max's current obsession with astronomy. I'd found a local planetarium that offered birthday packages, but they were well beyond my budget. Instead, I transformed our apartment with glow-in-the-dark stars, planet mobiles, and even created a spacecraft from cardboard boxes in the living room. I'd ordered a custom cake with an astronaut figurine that looked like Max, and splurged on a real telescope, a present I'd been saving for over 6 months. I'd invited Max's friends from school, of course, but this was the first year I'd made a concerted effort to include my family. 3 months' notice seemed more than adequate, and I'd even followed up with reminder texts as the date approached. Everyone had responded positively. My parents, Jake and his girlfriend, Alicia, even some cousins said they'd try to make it. The morning of the party, I was arranging space-themed cupcakes when my phone dinged. It was my mother. "So sorry, Rebecca. Woke up with a terrible migraine. Won't be able to make it today. Give Max our love." I stared at the message, a familiar sinking feeling in my stomach. Before I could respond, another message came in, this one from my father. "Got a tea time with Bob Wilson today. Important networking opportunity. Can't miss it. We'll call Max later." I set the phone down, hands trembling slightly as I tried to maintain my composure before Max noticed. I didn't want my disappointment to cast a shadow over his day, but the hits kept coming. "Hey sis, something came up with Alicia's family. We have a brunch thing we totally forgot about. Send the little man our best. We'll make it up to him soon." By the time Max's friends started arriving at 2 p.m., not a single member of my immediate family had shown up. The only relatives present were my Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, and her husband Tom, who had driven 2 hours to be there. They brought a thoughtful gift, the exact Lego space set Max had been coveting, and genuine warmth. "The others aren't coming, are they?" Aunt Martha asked quietly, as we watched Max and his friends exploring the moon surface I'd created in one corner of our living room. I shook my head, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "Apparently not." Martha squeezed my hand. "Their loss. Look how happy he is with his friends. You've done an amazing job, Rebecca." I tried to focus on that, on the joy in Max's face as he unwrapped presents. The way he beamed when his friends loved the astronaut ice cream I'd ordered online, the laughter as they played space-themed games. But I couldn't help noticing the way his eyes darted to the door whenever the bell rang, the slight fall in his expression when it was never the grandparents or uncle he hoped to see. When it was time for cake, Max made a wish and blew out his candles while everyone cheered. Later, as his friends were leaving, I overheard him telling his best friend Tyler, "My grandma and grandpa and uncle were supposed to come too. but they got really busy with important stuff. The stoic acceptance in his voice made me want to cry. After the party, while Max was playing with his new gifts, I absently scrolled through social media and felt a cold shock run through me. There was my mother, clearly migraine-free, posting photos from a shopping trip with her friends. The timestamp showed 3 p.m., right in the middle of Max's party. Curious now, I kept scrolling. My father had posted nothing, but he was tagged in a photo by one of his friends, not at a golf course, but watching sports in someone's living room. And then I saw it, Jake and Alicia, mimosas in hand, smiling at a trendy brunch spot downtown. Perfect Saturday vibes number weekend brunch number couple goals, read the caption. The post was timestamped at 11:30 a.m. They had all lied. Not one of them had a legitimate reason for missing Max's birthday. They simply hadn't cared enough to come. That night, after Max was asleep, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, trying to process my feelings. Was I overreacting? Was this just how families were? Part of me wondered if I was being too sensitive, if years of feeling second best had made me hypersensitive to perceived slights. But then I remembered Max's face, the careful way he had packed away the cards and small gifts from my parents, a gift card, and Jake, nothing, placing them in his special keepsake box despite their inadequacy. My son deserved better than to inherit my position as the family afterthought. I decided that night that something needed to change. I just didn't realize how soon that opportunity would present itself. Exactly 2 weeks after Max's birthday party, my phone lit up with a notification from our family group chat. It had been silent since the birthday debacle. No apologies, no follow-ups, not even a call to Max from my parents as my father had promised. The message was from my mother, and at first, I thought perhaps it was finally an acknowledgement of their absence at the party. Instead, what I saw made my coffee go cold in my hand. Exciting news! Jake's MBA graduation ceremony will be on June 15th. We're planning a spectacular celebration at the Westbrook Hotel's Grand Ballroom the following Saturday. It's going to be the event of the summer. We've already secured the venue, premium catering. They're flying in a chef from New York, a professional photographer, custom decorations, and a live jazz quartet that Jake loves. We're also putting together a generous group gift to celebrate his accomplishment. As this is a family celebration, we're dividing costs among family members. Your portion comes to $2,200. Please Venmo this to me by next Friday so we can finalize all the arrangements. We're all so proud of Jake's achievement. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. $2,200. More than 2 months of my grocery budget. More than half of Max's entire birthday savings from the past year. For a party celebrating Jake, who had never even sent Max a birthday card. Before I could gather my thoughts, more messages started flooding in. From my father. This is going to be incredible. Jake's business school connections will all be there. Plus some partners from Wilson and Reed who are interested in bringing him on. Once-in-a-lifetime celebration for a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. From my Aunt Claire, my father's sister. Just sent my contribution. Can't wait. From my Uncle Robert. We've booked our flights from Phoenix. Wouldn't miss it. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. The audacity was stunning. Not just the amount, but the assumption that I would contribute without question to an extravagant party for the brother who couldn't be bothered to show up for my son's birthday. The brother who had every advantage handed to him, while I struggled and scraped. When I didn't immediately respond with enthusiastic agreement, my phone rang. My mother, Rebecca. Did you see the message about Jake's graduation party? Her voice had that familiar edge, the tone that suggested I was already disappointing her somehow. Yes, I saw it, I replied, working to keep my voice even. Mom, I can't afford to contribute $2,200 to Jake's party. That's an enormous amount of money for me. There was a pause, then an incredulous laugh. Don't be ridiculous. Everyone is contributing. This is your brother's MBA graduation from Wharton. Do you have any idea how prestigious that is? I understand it's important, I said carefully, but that amount would seriously impact my budget. I'm a single parent with— Oh, here we go again, my mother interrupted. Always the victim card. Rebecca, this is a family obligation. We're not asking you to pay for the whole thing. Your father and I are covering most of it. Most of it? How much is this party costing in total? Another pause. About $30,000. But that includes everything. The venue, catering for 50 people, the open bar, the jazz band, the photographer, the videographer, the custom decorations, and the group gift. I nearly choked. $30,000? For a graduation party? Mom, that's insane. It's what Jake deserves, she snapped. He's worked incredibly hard. I bit back the obvious retort about how hard I'd worked as well, without a fraction of the support or recognition. Instead, I tried reason. I simply don't have that kind of money to spare. I could maybe contribute $200, but even that would mean cutting back on... My phone buzzed with another incoming call, Jake. My mother must have texted him. Your brother's calling. Talk to him. Maybe he can help you understand the importance of this. She hung up. I switched to Jake's call, already feeling cornered. Becca, he said, using the childhood nickname I'd long outgrown. What's this about you not wanting to chip in for my graduation party? It's not about not wanting to, Jake. It's about not being able to. $2,200 is a huge amount for me. Jake sighed dramatically. Look, I get that money's tight with the single mom thing, but surely you can budget for this. It's not like it's a surprise expense. I've been in the MBA program for 2 years. The condescension in his tone made my blood boil. Budget? Jake, do you have any idea what my actual budget looks like? I don't have parents paying my tuition and rent. Whoa, where is this hostility coming from? He interrupted. If this is about me missing Max's birthday, I already explained we had a prior commitment. We'll make it up to him. A prior commitment? I saw Alicia's Instagram post. Jake, you were at brunch. A beat of silence. We had brunch plans with her parents. They were in town. It was important. More important than your nephew's 10th birthday that you RSVP'd yes to 3 months in advance? Jesus. Rebecca, it was a kid's birthday party. There'll be another one next year. My MBA graduation is a one-time event. I closed my eyes, counting to 5 in my head. Jake, I'm happy for your achievement. Really. But I cannot contribute $2,200 to your party. That's final. My phone immediately lit up with a text from my father. Rebecca, this behavior is disappointing. Family supports family. Your brother has always been there for you. The least you could do is help celebrate his success. Think about it. I set my phone down, hands shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. The claim that Jake had always been there for me was so divorced from reality, it was almost laughable. Apart from the occasional holiday visit and superficial interaction with Max, Jake had been minimally involved in our lives. For the rest of the day, messages trickled in. My mother sent itemized costs of the party, as if seeing the breakdown would somehow make the expense more reasonable. Jake sent links to financial planning apps, accompanied by the message. These might help you get your finances in order. Easy to use. The patronizing tone was the final straw. I turned off my phone notifications and poured myself a glass of wine. As I sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset, I realized I needed time to think. This wasn't just about money. It was about years of unequal treatment, a feeling less valuable than my brother, and now, worst of all, seeing that same treatment extended to my innocent son. I needed to respond, but I wanted it to be thoughtful rather than reactive. This felt like a crossroads in my relationship with my family, and whatever I decided would have lasting consequences. The next morning, I woke up with a clearer mind but a heavy heart. After getting Max off to school, I called the one family member I knew I could trust, Aunt Martha. Unlike my parents, Martha had always shown genuine interest in my life and Max's. She remembered birthdays, asked thoughtful questions, and never compared me unfavorably to Jake. I was wondering when you'd call, Martha said after I explained the situation. Your mother called me yesterday, complaining about your selfishness. I nearly bit through my tongue trying not to set her straight. Am I being selfish? I asked, hating the uncertainty in my voice. Is $2,200 a reasonable amount to expect me to contribute? Martha's laugh was sharp. Rebecca, honey, nothing about this is reasonable. That's more than I'm contributing. And Howard and I have dual incomes and no dependent children. Your mother knows your financial situation. She's being deliberately obtuse. Her validation loosened something in my chest. I just don't understand why they keep doing this, treating Jake like he's royalty while Max and I are barely an afterthought. There was a long pause before Martha spoke again, her voice gentler. I think it's time you knew some things, Rebecca. Things I probably should have told you years ago. Over the next hour, Martha filled in gaps in my understanding of our family dynamics that left me stunned. She revealed conversations she'd overheard, patterns she'd observed as an outside family member with inside access. Your mother has been comparing you to Jake since you were children, but not in the way you might think, Martha explained. To the extended family, to her friends, even to strangers, she would point out how you were so independent, how you never needed anything, how you figured things out on your own, all while highlighting how Jake needed support, required guidance, benefited from their investment. That doesn't make any sense, I protested. If anything, that makes me sound better than Jake. Exactly, Martha said. She was justifying why they poured everything into him while giving you nothing. She turned your self-sufficiency, which was really just you adapting to their neglect, into a virtue that absolved them of parental responsibility toward you. Meanwhile, Jake's dependence was framed as something endearing that required their continued attention and resources. I sat with that revelation, memories rearranging themselves in my mind. All those times I'd been praised for handling things on my own. It wasn't admiration. It was rationalization. There's more, Martha continued. Your father once told Howard at a family barbecue that he was investing in the child with potential. Howard challenged him on it, asking what that meant about you. Your father said, and I quote, "Rebecca will be fine. She'll marry, have kids, live a normal life. Jake could be something special. He just needs the right opportunities." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. My own father had decided my ceiling before I'd even had a chance to reach for it. When you got pregnant with Max, Martha went on, your mother called me in tears. Not because she was worried about you, mind you. She was upset because, and again I quote, now Rebecca will never finish college. We'll have to help support her and the baby, which means less for Jake's master's program. I laughed bitterly. Little did she know I'd figure it out on my own. Like I always had to. Exactly. And when you did, when you finished your degree while working and raising Max alone, do you know what your mother said to me? She said, "See, I told you Rebecca would be fine. She doesn't need us like Jake does." That's twisted, I whispered. It is. And it's been going on for decades. I've tried to advocate for you, Rebecca. So has Howard. But Susan and Richard have created this narrative where Jake is perpetually in need and you are perpetually self-sufficient, regardless of the actual facts. Martha went on to describe other incidents. My mother deliberately downplaying my achievements to relatives. My father redirecting conversations about my promotions to Jake's latest adventures, both of them framing my independence as a character flaw when it didn't suit them. The most revealing thing, Martha said, was what happened when you bought your car 2 years ago. Remember how proud you were? First new car you'd ever owned, saved for it yourself. Your mother told her bridge club that you were showing off, trying to one-up Jake, who was still driving the car they bought him, as if your achievement somehow diminished him. By the end of our conversation, I felt both clarity and grief. The family dynamics I'd experienced weren't just unfair. They were deliberately constructed to maintain Jake as the eternal recipient of family resources and attention, while I was cast as neither deserving nor needing the same. That evening, after putting Max to bed, I found him still awake, staring at the glow in the dark stars on his ceiling. "Mom?" he asked when I came to check on him. "Are we going to Uncle Jake's graduation party?" I sat on the edge of his bed. "I'm not sure yet, buddy." "Why do you ask?" He was quiet for a moment. "Grandma called today while you were in the shower. She said Uncle Jake was having a super important party and that you might not come because you were being difficult." My blood ran cold. "She called you? Without asking me first?" Max nodded. "She said I should tell you that family is the most important thing, and that we should support Uncle Jake." Using my 10-year-old son to manipulate me was a new low, even for my mother. I carefully controlled my expression, not wanting Max to see my anger. "What do you think about that?" I asked him. Max considered the question seriously, in that thoughtful way he had. "I think," he said slowly, "that family is supposed to go both ways. Like, remember when Tyler got mad at me for not sharing my Switch, but then he never shares his PlayStation? You said relationships have to be fair to both people." Out of the mouths of babes. "That's right, Max. So," he continued, "working it out. If Uncle Jake and Grandma and Grandpa don't come to my birthday, but they want us to spend a lot of money on Uncle Jake's party, that's not fair both ways, right?" I kissed his forehead, overwhelmed with love for my wise little boy. "That's exactly right. And you know what? You just helped me figure out what to do." "Thank you." As I closed his door, I felt a weight lifting. The clarity I'd been seeking had come from the most unexpected source: my son's innate sense of fairness. For years, I'd accepted the unequal treatment, made excuses for it, even wondered if I was imagining it. But seeing them extend the same dismissive attitude to Max had finally broken through my conditioning. It was time to respond to my family's demand, and to do so with complete honesty. Not out of spite or revenge, but as an act of self-respect, and, more importantly, to model healthy boundaries for my son. After another day of messages from my family, ranging from guilt trips to thinly veiled threats about family standing, I sat down at my computer and opened a new email. I chose email rather than text because I wanted the space to fully express myself without interruption, and I wanted a record of what I'd said. I addressed it to my parents and Jake, with Aunt Martha and Uncle Howard copied. Taking a deep breath, I began typing, "Dear Mom, Dad, and Jake, I've spent the past few days considering the request for a $2,200 contribution to Jake's graduation party. After careful thought, I need to share some hard truths about why I cannot and will not be contributing this amount. For as long as I can remember, there has been a clear disparity in how our family operates. Jake has consistently received unconditional support, celebration, and financial backing for every milestone and achievement in his life. I have not. When I graduated college, working my way through school while pregnant and then raising a child, there was no party. There was no celebration dinner. You left early from the ceremony for Jake's fraternity event. When I got my promotion last year after 5 years of hard work, my news was acknowledged with a quick, "That's nice," before the conversation shifted to Jake's decision to apply to business schools. But the most hurtful example came just 2 weeks ago, when not a single one of you showed up for Max's 10th birthday party, despite RSVPing yes 3 months in advance. Instead, you all made up transparent excuses that I later discovered were lies through social media posts. Mom, you were shopping while supposedly suffering from a migraine. Dad, you were watching TV at home, not at an important golf game. And Jake, you and Alicia were at a casual brunch, not some unmissable family obligation. Do you have any idea how it felt to watch Max keep glancing at the door, waiting for grandparents and an uncle who never came? Do you know that he still carefully saved the gift card you sent, Mom and Dad, placing it in his special box even though it was clearly a last-minute afterthought? Do you know that he defended your absence to his friends, making excuses for you just like I've been doing my entire life? Now, 2 weeks later, you expect me to contribute $2,200, a significant financial strain for me, to celebrate Jake's graduation with an extravagant party that costs more than my entire year's savings for Max's college fund. This isn't about money. It's about reciprocity, respect, and recognition. It's about acknowledging that my son and I deserve the same consideration that has been automatically granted to Jake. So here is my response. I will be sending a contribution of $1 to Jake's graduation celebration. This symbolic amount represents the imbalance that has characterized our family relationships for decades. I do not make this decision lightly or out of petty revenge. I make it as a statement about the relationship I want and deserve going forward. One based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. If you would like to discuss rebuilding our relationship on more equitable terms, I am open to that conversation. But I will no longer accept the role of second-class family member who is expected to give endlessly while receiving crumbs in return. Rebecca. I read the email 3 times, making small adjustments, before finally hitting send. Once it was gone, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and relief. I'd finally said what I'd been holding inside for decades. Whatever happened next, I knew I'd stood up for myself and for Mac. For 2 full days, there was complete silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. The family group chat remained dormant. By the evening of the second day, I began to wonder if they were simply going to ignore my email entirely. A final dismissal that would confirm everything I'd said. Then, as I was preparing dinner, my phone exploded with notifications. The first was a lengthy email from my mother, full of righteous indignation and selective memory. She recounted all the sacrifices they'd supposedly made for me, how ungrateful I was being, how I'd always been difficult and oversensitive. She questioned my parenting, suggesting that perhaps Max was becoming entitled under my influence. The email concluded with an ultimatum: apologize and send the full contribution, or don't bother attending the graduation or the party. Jake's response came next, a condescending phone call where he lectured me about growing up and getting past childhood jealousy. He suggested that my obvious issues were affecting my ability to be happy for him. When I attempted to address the specific examples I'd mentioned, particularly his absence at Max's birthday, he dismissed them as ancient history and not relevant to the current situation. "You're making yourself look petty, Becca," he said. "Everyone thinks so." "Everyone who?" I challenged. "Mom and Dad showed your email to Aunt Claire and Uncle Robert. Even they think you're being ridiculous." The knowledge that my parents had shared my private email with other family members without my consent was yet another violation. So instead of addressing what I said, they're gathering allies to pressure me? That seems healthy. Jake sighed dramatically. "Look, no one's perfect, okay? Maybe Mom and Dad weren't always fair when we were kids. But we're adults now. You need to let it go." "Let it go?" I repeated. "Jake, this isn't ancient history. Max's birthday was 2 weeks ago. None of you showed up, and all of you lied about why. Now you want thousands of dollars for your party. You don't see the problem here? I told you, something came up last minute with Alicia's family. We couldn't get out of it. You were at brunch, Jake. I saw Alicia's Instagram post." There was a pause. "You know what? I don't need this negativity before my graduation. Either be supportive or don't come. It's that simple." He hung up. My father's voicemail came last. His tone was measured but cold, expressing deep disappointment in my attitude and behavior. He said they had always treated both children fairly and that my jealousy of Jake's success was something I needed to address with a professional. He concluded by saying they would welcome me back to the family when I was ready to apologize. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, feeling strangely calm despite the barrage of manipulative messages. Their reactions, deflection, gaslighting, recruiting allies, issuing ultimatums, only confirmed the dysfunctional patterns I'd described in my email. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly the conflict would spread beyond my immediate family. By the following morning, I'd received messages from several extended family members. Some, who had only heard my parents' version, expressed concern about my mental state and urged me to make peace. Others, who had either witnessed the inequality over the years or been shown my actual email, expressed support and shared similar experiences with my parents. My cousin Sarah called to tell me she'd faced similar treatment, always living in the shadow of her sister Jennifer, my mother's favorite niece. "Your email was brave," she told me. "I wish I'd had the courage to say something years ago." Several relatives took my side after hearing the full story, particularly when they learned about Max's ignored birthday. This unexpected support strengthened my resolve. For the first time, I wasn't alone in recognizing the dysfunctional patterns in our family. As the days passed, the pressure intensified. My mother sent daily texts alternating between guilt trips, "This is breaking your father's heart," and threats, "You're damaging relationships with the entire family." My father left additional voicemails, each more stern than the last. Jake sent a single text, "Way to make my graduation all about you. Classic Rebecca." Through it all, I held firm. The $1 symbolic contribution had been sent via Venmo with the memo, "Family support goes both ways." My mother had immediately refunded it with the note, "Don't bother." What had begun as a dispute over a party contribution had evolved into something much more significant, a long overdue confrontation with the fundamental imbalance in my family relationships. And despite the stress and hurt, I felt more centered and sure of myself than I had in years. The weeks leading up to Jake's graduation and party were tense. Communications from my family alternated between guilt-inducing messages and stony silence. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to direct questions with brief, neutral answers. As the graduation day approached, I debated whether to attend at all. Part of me wanted to stay away, to protect myself and Max from further rejection, but another part felt that attending on my own terms would demonstrate maturity and closure. After careful consideration, I decided we would attend the graduation ceremony as a show of basic family support, but that I would make an appearance at the party solely to deliver my message in person. The night before the events, I called Aunt Martha for moral support. "Are you sure you want to go?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "No one would blame you for skipping it after everything that's happened." "I'm sure," I replied, more confident than I felt. "If I don't go, they'll use it as proof that I'm the unreasonable one. Besides, I want Max to see that we can take the high road while still maintaining our boundaries." Martha sighed. "You've always been the most mature one in this family, Rebecca. Just promise me you'll leave if things get ugly. And call me immediately after. Howard and I want to know you're okay." The morning of the graduation, I dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress that I'd found on sale months earlier. Max looked handsome in khaki pants and a button-down shirt. As I adjusted his collar, I noticed him watching me intently. "What is it, buddy?" I asked. "Are Grandma and Grandpa still mad at us?" he asked, his young face serious. I knelt down to his level. "They're upset about some adult things, Max, but that's between them and me. You haven't done anything wrong, okay? And neither have I. Sometimes adults disagree about important things, and it takes time to work through those disagreements." He nodded solemnly, like when Tyler and I fought about the rules in our club, but then we made new rules together. I smiled at his simple but apt comparison. Exactly like that. Except adult disagreements sometimes take longer to resolve. "Will we still go to Uncle Jake's party after the graduation?" "We'll make a short appearance," I said, "just to congratulate Uncle Jake. But we won't stay long." Max seemed satisfied with this explanation, and we headed to the university campus for the ceremony. We arrived early and found seats toward the back of the auditorium, deliberately avoiding the special seating area reserved for graduates' families. I had no desire to sit through 2 hours shoulder to shoulder with my parents, maintaining a facade of family harmony. As the ceremony progressed, I spotted my parents and Jake's girlfriend, Alicia, in the family section, all dressed impeccably. My mother wore an expensive-looking pale pink suit that I'd never seen before, likely purchased specially for the occasion. She kept scanning the crowd, perhaps looking for me. I sank lower in my seat, grateful for the anonymity provided by the sea of attendees. When Jake's name was called and he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, I nudged Max. "That's Uncle Jake's big moment," I whispered. Max dutifully clapped along with everyone else. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Genuine happiness for my brother's achievement, tangled with lingering hurt over years of inequity. After the ceremony, as people spilled out onto the campus grounds for photos, I debated approaching my family, but decided against it. The graduation itself wasn't the issue. It was the extravagant party and the demands placed on me. We would say our congratulations at the event later that evening. Max and I went for ice cream and a visit to the park to fill the hours before the party. As the time approached, I found myself growing increasingly anxious. Remember, I told Max as we pulled into the hotel parking lot that evening, "We're just staying for a little while to congratulate Uncle Jake. If anyone says anything that makes you uncomfortable, you come tell me right away, okay?" "Okay, Mom," he agreed, already distracted by the grand hotel entrance with its fountain and uniformed doormen. The Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a spectacular venue. Crystal chandeliers glittered above elegantly decorated tables. A jazz quartet played in one corner near a fully stocked bar. Professional photographers circulated, capturing candid moments. Ice sculptures shaped like Wharton's logo adorned the buffet tables, which were laden with gourmet food. It was exactly as extravagant as my mother had described, and every bit as excessive as I'd imagined. The cost of this single evening would have covered months of my living expenses. We had barely stepped into the ballroom when my mother spotted us. She approached with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rebecca, Max, I wasn't sure you'd come." Her voice was cool but carefully modulated, mindful of the public setting. "We wanted to congratulate Jake," I replied, matching her neutral tone. "This is quite a celebration you've put together." Her eyes narrowed slightly at what she perhaps perceived as criticism, but she maintained her social smile. "Only the best for Jake's achievement. He's worked very hard for this." I bit back the retort that immediately came to mind about my own hard work that had gone uncelebrated. Instead, I simply nodded. "Where is the guest of honor?" I asked, mingling with some of the partners from Wilson and Reed. My mother replied, gesturing toward a group of men in expensive suits across the room. "They're very interested in him. This could be a fantastic opportunity." I noted she hadn't asked a single question about how Max or I were doing. "Max," she said, finally acknowledging my son. "Don't you look handsome? There are some desserts over on that table if you'd like something sweet." Max looked at me for permission, and I nodded. "Stay where I can see you, buddy." As he walked away, my mother's demeanor shifted. "I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up after that email and that insulting Venmo payment." "I came to support Jake's achievement," I said evenly, "and to give him this in person." I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope containing a graduation card with a $1 bill enclosed. My mother's face flushed. "You can't be serious. This childish behavior needs to stop, Rebecca. Everyone is talking about it." "I'm sure they are, Mom. Especially since you've shown my private email to half the family. We needed support after your vicious attack. The things you accused us of, it's absolutely untrue that we've ever favored Jake. You've always been so independent, never needing anything from us." There it was, exactly as Martha had described. My independence, born of necessity due to their neglect, reframed as a reason to give me less. "Where's Dad?" I asked, changing the subject. "Talking to Jake's former professor. And speaking of your father, he's extremely hurt by your behavior. He's given you everything, and this is how you repay him?" I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the claim. "Everything? Mom, he didn't even come to Max's birthday party 2 weeks ago. None of you did. You all lied about why you couldn't make it, and now you expect me to chip in thousands of dollars for this?" I gestured around the opulent ballroom. "That again? It was a children's party, Rebecca. We had important obligations. Shopping, watching TV, and having brunch are not important obligations. And it wasn't just a children's party. It was your grandson's 10th birthday." My mother's perfectly made-up face hardened. "I think you should leave. You're obviously in no state to celebrate Jake's special day. I'll leave after I give Jake his card," I said firmly. "No need," came a voice from behind me. I turned to see Jake, looking polished in an expensive suit, his expression a mixture of smugness and annoyance. "I heard what you're planning to give me. Keep your dollar, Rebecca. Your pettiness isn't welcome here." "It's not pettiness, Jake. It's a message about reciprocity. You can't ignore my son's birthday and then expect me to contribute thousands to your party." Jake rolled his eyes. "Still on about that birthday party? Look, I'm sorry we missed the kids' party, okay? Things came up. It happens. Get over it." "Things didn't come up. You went to brunch. I saw Alicia's Instagram post." At the mention of her name, Alicia appeared at Jake's side, looking uncomfortable. "Jake," she said quietly, "maybe we should talk about this privately?" Jake ignored her, his face flushing with anger. "You know what your problem is, Rebecca? You've always been jealous of me. Always. Mom and Dad have bent over backward trying to help you, but you reject everything because you're too proud. And now you're trying to ruin my graduation because you can't stand that I'm successful." His voice had risen, attracting attention from nearby guests. My father appeared, looking stern. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Rebecca's making a scene," my mother hissed. As usual, I took a deep breath, determined to maintain my composure. "I'm not making a scene. I came to congratulate Jake, give him his card, and then Max and I will leave." "Keep your card," Jake snapped, "and your judgmental attitude." I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope, and held it out to Jake. "Congratulations on your graduation, Jake. I mean that sincerely. He stared at the envelope but made no move to take it. My mother stepped forward. This has gone far enough. Give me that ridiculous card, and then I think you should leave. I handed her the envelope instead. Here you go, Mom. Consider it my contribution to today's celebration. She snatched it from my hand and tore it open right there. When the single-dollar bill floated out, her face contorted with rage. How dare you? She hissed, her voice low but intense. How dare you insult us like this? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? When have you ever shown up for me the way you've always shown up for Jake? When have you ever celebrated my achievements the way you're celebrating his right now? You ungrateful, she began, her voice rising. Susan, my father warned, glancing around at the nearby guests who were now openly staring. But my mother was beyond caring about appearances. You think you've had it so hard? You have no idea what sacrifices we've made. And now you come here, to this beautiful event we've created for your brother, and you try to ruin it with your petty grievances and your $1. $1. She held up the bill, waving it for emphasis, her voice now loud enough that the jazz quartet had stopped playing. The room had gone quiet, all eyes on our family drama unfolding in the middle of the ballroom. Mom, Jake said, trying to calm her, let's not do this here. But she was on a roll now, decades of resentment spilling out. You've always been difficult, Rebecca. Always questioning. Always complaining. Jake appreciates what we do for him. Jake is grateful. Jake has been given everything. I finally raised my voice to match hers. Full college tuition, living expenses, a new car, and now a $30,000 graduation party. What have you ever given me that comes close to that kind of support? You never needed it. You were always independent. I was independent because I had to be. Because from the time I was a child, it was clear that Jake was the priority in this family. And now you're extending the same treatment to my son, and I won't stand for it anymore. My father grabbed my arm. That's enough, Rebecca. You need to leave. Now, I yanked my arm away. Don't touch me. Max and I are going. Don't worry. We know when we're not wanted. I turned to find Max, only to discover him standing right behind me, his eyes wide and frightened. He had witnessed the entire exchange. My heart sank. Come on, honey, I said softly, reaching for his hand. It's time to go. As we turned to leave, a voice called out. Wait, it was Alicia, Jake's girlfriend. She stepped forward, positioning herself slightly apart from my family. Everything Rebecca said is true, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I've seen it ever since Jake and I started dating. The way you dismiss her, the way you prioritize Jake. And yes, we did skip Max's birthday for brunch. There was no family obligation. Jake didn't want to go because he said kid parties are boring. And I went along with it because I didn't want to cause problems. The look of betrayal on Jake's face was palpable. Alicia, what the hell? I'm sorry, Jake, she said, not sounding particularly sorry. But I can't keep pretending this is normal. The way your family treats Rebecca and Max isn't right. And the way you expect her to contribute so much money when you couldn't even be bothered to show up for her son, it's not right. My mother had gone pale. My father looked like he might explode. Jake was staring at Alicia as if he'd never seen her before. In the stunned silence, I took Max's hand and walked out of the ballroom with my head held high. Despite the public drama, despite the hurt and anger, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself and my son. And, unexpectedly, I hadn't stood alone. The drive home from the Westbrook Hotel was silent. Max stared out the window, his young face thoughtful. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, worried about the impact of witnessing such an explosive family confrontation. Are you okay, buddy? I finally asked as we neared our apartment. He considered the question seriously. I think so. But Grandma was really mad. Yes, she was. I agreed. Sometimes adults get very emotional when they're confronted with difficult truths. Like when Tyler got mad when I told him he cheated at Mario Kart. I smiled despite myself. Something like that. But much bigger and more complicated. We pulled into our parking spot, and as I turned off the engine, Max asked, "Are they still our family?" The question broke my heart a little. Yes, Max. They're still our family. But sometimes families need space from each other to figure things out. Like when you and I have an argument and need some quiet time before we talk again. So we're in quiet time with Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Jake? Yes, exactly. We're in quiet time. That night, after Max was asleep, I turned my phone back on to find it flooded with notifications. There were angry texts from my mother, disappointed messages from my father, and a single text from Jake that simply read, "Hope you're happy now. Alicia and I are fighting because of you." But there were also messages of support from Aunt Martha and Uncle Howard, who had heard about the confrontation, from my cousin Sarah, who called me her hero, even from a few extended family members who had witnessed the scene at the party and been troubled by my mother's reaction. Most surprisingly, there was a long message from Alicia. "Rebecca, I'm sorry for what happened tonight. I should have spoken up sooner about the way your family treats you. Jake and I had a huge fight after you left. He keeps saying I betrayed him. But I told him that enabling your family's toxic dynamics isn't loyalty. It's complicity. I don't know if our relationship will survive this, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. Take care of yourself and Max. You deserved better tonight, and for many nights before." I set my phone aside, overwhelmed by the mix of anger, support, and unexpected allyship. For the next 3 days, I kept my phone off except for brief periods to check essential messages. I needed space to process everything that had happened. When I returned to work the following Monday, I threw myself into my projects, finding solace in the predictability and logic of my marketing campaigns. My colleagues noticed something different about me: a new assertiveness in meetings, a willingness to speak up where I might previously have remained silent. "You seem different lately," my coworker Melissa commented over lunch. "More, I don't know, present, confident?" I considered her observation. "I think I am. I finally stood up to some long-standing family issues. It was messy and painful, but also liberating." Max and I settled into a new routine, one unmarked by the anxiety of trying to please my family or the disappointment that inevitably followed. We started new traditions: Saturday morning hikes, Sunday board game tournaments with neighbors, cooking experiments that sometimes ended in takeout pizza, but always in laughter. Aunt Martha and Uncle Howard became more regular fixtures in our lives, coming for dinner every couple of weeks and genuinely engaging with Max's interests and activities. My cousin Sarah and her husband David invited us to their lake house for a weekend, where Max learned to fish and made friends with their children. I also connected with a support group for adults dealing with family estrangement and difficult family relationships. The stories I heard from others helped me understand that my experience, while painful, wasn't unique. There was comfort in that shared understanding, in knowing I wasn't alone in establishing boundaries with toxic family dynamics. For 3 months, I maintained minimal contact with my parents and Jake. Their initial barrage of angry messages eventually trickled to occasional terse texts, usually around practical matters or attempts to make me feel guilty about the estrangement. Then, unexpectedly, I received an email from Alicia, the first contact since her message the night of the graduation party. "Rebecca, I thought you should know that Jake and I are engaged. It happened last weekend. Despite our fight after his graduation party, we worked through some things. I made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate the way his family treats you and Max, and eventually, he started to see my perspective. Here's why I'm really writing. Susan and Richard are already taking over the wedding planning. They're talking about a $75,000 event and saying they'll contribute most of it, but there's a catch. Jake has to agree to join your father's friend's firm instead of taking the job he actually wants in Seattle. They're using financial support to control his choices, just like they've always done. For the first time, Jake is seeing how their generosity comes with strings attached. He's starting to understand a fraction of what you've been saying all these years. I don't expect this to fix everything between you and your family. Too much has happened, but I thought you should know that your standing up for yourself has had ripple effects. Changes are happening slowly. Take care. Alicia." The email left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, I felt validated. Jake was finally experiencing what I'd known all along about our parents' conditional support. On the other hand, I felt sad that it had taken this long, and that so much damage had been done in the meantime. I showed the email to my therapist, Dr. Bennett, whom I'd started seeing shortly after the graduation party confrontation. "How does this information make you feel?" she asked after reading it. "Vindicated, I guess? But also, I don't know, melancholy. All these years of trying to explain to Jake how differently we were treated, and he never believed me. Now he's experiencing it firsthand. And it took this long. Do you think this creates an opening for reconciliation?" I considered the question carefully. Maybe. Not right away, but maybe eventually. On new terms. Terms where I'm not expected to accept crumbs while Jake gets the feast. As the months passed, I continued my healing journey. The anger that had once felt all-consuming began to transform into something more measured. A clear-eyed understanding of my family's dynamics and my place within them. I no longer felt the need to prove my worth to people who couldn't or wouldn't see it. Max continued to flourish, secure in the knowledge that he was loved and valued. Without the background stress of trying to gain my family's approval, I found I had more emotional energy for him, for my work, for building meaningful connections with friends and chosen family. The first holiday season without my extended family loomed as a potential challenge. In previous years, we'd always gathered at my parents' house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, enduring the subtle slights and comparisons for the sake of family harmony. What would you think about creating our own holiday traditions this year? I asked Max one evening in early November. "Just us?" he asked. "Maybe just us for some things. But also, maybe Aunt Martha and Uncle Howard, cousin Sarah and her family. People who really show up for us." Max thought about it. "Could we have chocolate pie for Thanksgiving instead of pumpkin? Grandma always makes pumpkin even though I told her I don't like it." I laughed. "Absolutely. We can have chocolate pie, green pie, blue pie, whatever kind of pie makes you happy." His face lit up. "And can we watch movies in our pajamas on Christmas morning instead of getting dressed up for pictures before we can open presents?" That sounds perfect. The holiday season that followed wasn't perfect. There were moments of sadness and nostalgia for the family relationships I wished I had, rather than the ones I actually did. But there were also new joys. A Thanksgiving dinner where everyone's preferences were honored. A Christmas morning spent in pajamas watching movies before opening presents. New Year's Eve with Sarah's family. The children staying up till midnight while the adults shared stories and laughter. It was different, but it was authentic. And that made all the difference. 6 months after the graduation party confrontation, I sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset with a glass of wine. Max was at a sleepover with his friend Tyler, and the apartment was quiet in a way that felt peaceful rather than lonely. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, the first direct communication in several weeks. "Your father and I would like to meet with you to discuss some things. Let us know when you're available. No guilt trip, no manipulation, no accusations. Just a straightforward request." It was so unlike her usual approach that I found myself intrigued despite my wariness. After consulting with Dr. Bennett, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, with clear boundaries about time, 1 hour maximum, and topics: no criticism of my parenting, no guilt trips about family obligations. To my surprise, they agreed to my terms without argument. The meeting itself was awkward but civil. My father, always the more reserved of my parents, seemed to have aged in the months since I'd seen him. My mother was more subdued than I could ever remember seeing her. "We've been doing some thinking," my father began after we'd ordered our coffees, "and some talking with a family counselor." This genuinely surprised me. My parents had always dismissed therapy as something for weak people who can't handle their problems. "The things you said in your email, and at the graduation party," my mother continued, her voice carefully measured. "We didn't want to hear them. But some of what you said, there might be some truth to it." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of the decades of unequal treatment, but it was more than I had ever expected to hear. "Jake's wedding planning has been illuminating," my father added, a hint of discomfort in his expression. "We've realized that perhaps our approach to supporting our children hasn't always been balanced. Or fair," my mother admitted reluctantly. "We didn't solve everything in that hour. Years of hurt and dysfunctional patterns couldn't be resolved in a single conversation. But it was a start, an acknowledgement that something had been wrong, and perhaps could be made better." We agreed to tentative, limited contact moving forward. Sunday phone calls, monthly dinners at restaurants, neutral territory. all with the understanding that if old patterns re-emerged, I would step back again without guilt or explanation. Jake and I had our own cautious reconciliation a few weeks later. Alicia had indeed been a catalyst for change in his perspective, though he still struggled to fully acknowledge the extent of the favoritism he had benefited from. "I still think you're exaggerating some things," he said during our first one-on-one conversation, "but I can see that Mom and Dad do treat us differently. The wedding stuff has been eye-opening. Every time I try to make a decision they don't like, they threaten to withdraw funding." "Welcome to autonomy," I said, without malice. "It's harder, but ultimately more satisfying than being the golden child." He winced at the term, but didn't argue. "Alicia really admires you, you know. She says you're teaching her how to set boundaries." That made me smile. She's pretty remarkable herself. Standing up to all of you at the party couldn't have been easy. Our relationship remained a work in progress, but there was a new foundation of honesty that had never existed before. As Max's next birthday approached, I watched with interest to see how my family would respond. Would they revert to their old patterns of dismissal and afterthought gifts? To my surprise, my mother called a month in advance. "We'd like to know what Max might want for his birthday, and what time his party will be. We want to make sure we don't schedule anything else that day." The party itself was modest compared to Jake's graduation extravaganza, a space-themed gathering at the local science center, well within my budget. But what made it special was that, for the first time, Max was surrounded by people who were genuinely there for him. His school friends, our neighbors, Aunt Martha and Uncle Howard, Cousin Sarah and her family, and yes, even my parents and Jake with Alicia. My mother brought a cake in addition to the one I'd ordered, an unnecessary gesture that would have once annoyed me as an attempt to upstage my planning, but I chose to see it as her way of trying to make amends, however imperfectly. As I watched Max blow out his candles, surrounded by people who valued him, I reflected on the journey of the past year. Standing up to my family had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but also one of the most necessary. I had learned that true family isn't about obligation or blood ties. It's about love, respect, and mutual support. That financial manipulation is indeed a form of control, one that works only if you allow it. That setting and maintaining boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I had learned that breaking generational patterns requires courage and consistency. By refusing to accept the role of second-class family member, I had not only changed my own life, but potentially altered the course for Max and generations to come. The new relationship with my family wasn't perfect. There were still missteps and moments of tension, old habits that died hard. But unlike before, these were now addressed openly, rather than swept under the rug. And when boundaries were crossed, I no longer hesitated to reinforce them. What had begun with a $1 symbolic gesture had evolved into something priceless: self-worth, authentic relationships, and the freedom that comes from being truly seen. As Max opened his presents that day, his face alight with joy, I knew we had found our way to something better than I had ever experienced in my own childhood. A family defined not by obligation or favoritism, but by genuine love and respect. And that was worth far more than any extravagant party could ever be. I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. Has anyone else had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Drop a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life journeys. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most healing. Thank you all for your support. And may you find the courage to value yourself, even when others don't.